Welcome to
Living Water Live.
Home Edition.
That's right. Welcome to Living Water Live Home Edition. We're so glad you came to join us.
And you don't want to miss it.
No, you don't want to miss it because we have lots of fun here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll have songs and dancing and music.
Songs and dancing and music. Wow. Well, we got lots of fun stuff coming your way. Clearly.
I know that I hear songs and dancing and music. And maybe even Christian sports.
Christian sports? Well, I'm not exactly sure what show they're going to be watching, but I'm going to tell you we have an exciting service planned for you. We've got a special children's story by Miss Crystal Anderson. We're continuing our sermon series, Made for This Moment, Conquering COVID-19, with a new message entitled,
Daddy.
Out of Courage. Yes, Eden?
And with some great songs and Christian dancing.
Well, we're going to have some great...
And great songs and Christian dancing.
Well, we're going to have another special song by Miss Erica Portella, a fan favorite here at Living Water. And up next, you're going to hear from our very own Living Water Praise. So stick around, join us, worship, praise. Jesus is here, so you don't want to miss it.
Yeah,
God bless you and enjoy today's service.
And I love the praise team.
Jesus, apart. So remember your people, remember your children, remember your promise, oh God. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough.
much for those wonderful songs, praise team. And now comes a children's story by Miss Crystal Anderson. Take it away.
Take it away.
Take it away.
Good morning, boys and girls. The last time we met, we talked about using our gifts for God.
We don't want to sing in church.
Oh, you guys don't like singing in the children's choir?
I didn't even warm up yesterday. And people don't like my voice. Yeah.
Oh man, that's a really big problem. And when we have a problem, they need us,
The Bible readers.
You guys ready to transform?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow.
Eden becomes Purple Sparkle. Matea becomes Flower Girl. Judah becomes the Jujubee. Mommy becomes Cowgirl Mama.
And together we are the Bible Readers. Okay, well, let's restate our problem.
I know I love singing, but I don't like singing in church.
Oh man, when we have a problem, we look in the book.
Which book should we look in?
Let's say our power statement. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path.
Oh, where are we?
It looks like we're in the story of Dorcas. Let's get into this story. You guys see a Bible letter? Where? What is it? R. Good job. Hi, boys and girls. My name is Dorcas, and I like using my gifts of cooking and sewing to help those in need. Hey, how are you?
Good, but I'm starving and hungry.
Oh no. You know, I have a lot of food at my house. Come on, let's go. I can share with you. Oh, is she okay?
We're starving, we don't have any food to eat, and we don't have any clothes.
Oh no, what happened to your husband?
He died.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Come to my house. I have plenty of food. And invite anyone else who needs food. Let's go. Oh, this food is so good. Thank you, Dorcas. You're welcome. Everyone, I made you all...
I love it.
So glad you guys enjoy it. I made everyone some clothes because I know you guys are struggling right now. Here, this is for you. And I made you some pants. And I made you a skirt. And here's something for your little girl. And I made you a nice skirt. So yeah, let's enjoy the food.
Do you see the letter V?
Thank you so much for helping me clean up.
You're welcome.
Oh, my head hurts. Do I feel warm to you?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't feel too good. Oh.
Dorcas, are you okay?
Can you help me to bed?
Dorcas, no!
What happened?
Dorcas died.
Oh, that's so sad. Wait, I know Peter. He's in the next town over. Who's Peter? Peter is Jesus' disciple. Okay, I'm going. My panther, come.
Okay, let's go get Peter. Hopefully he can help.
Do you see the letters S and E?
Are you Peter? Yes, I am. Dorcas died. Oh, take me to her.
Oh, Dorcas, why'd you have to go?
All the clothes that she made us.
Please help Peter, please.
Okay, everybody leave the room.
Okay, let's go. Come on. Maybe he can heal her.
Jesus, please heal Dorcas.
Oh, man, that was a really bad headache. Peter, what are you doing here?
It was Jesus.
Oh, man, I'm alive. I'm alive.
She's
Jesus.
alive, praise Jesus.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jesus.
a great start. You ready to transform back?
Yeah, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Wow, that was a really good story. Let's go over our Bible story answer. S-E-R-V-E. Serve.
So even if I don't want to sing in church, I still serve.
Yes, we should use our gifts and our talents to serve God and to serve others. And God will bless us just like he did Dorcas. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Bye.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. I know that you may be listening to this song from your homes, even if we are supposed to be staying at home, but we can always praise God no matter where we are. Happy Sabbath. And we can always turn to Him. When I turn to you, you are always waiting with a heart that understands before I speak, and I learn from you all that really matters. Though a million years go by, you still love me. I no longer look for a place to hide, for I know when I'll belong when I turn to you. When I turn to you, when I turn to you, I know that I love you. When I turn to you, you are watching over me. Through the eyes that look beyond the faults I see, and I learn from you that you are always merciful. No, I remember all that you have forgiven me. I no longer look for a place to hide, for I know where I belong when I turn to you. When I turn to you, when I turn to you, I know that I love you. When I turn to you, I know that I love you. When I turn to you, I know that you love me.
We are marked. We are marked by the lines where smiles have been, by the calluses of our labor, by the scars of our struggles, and by the strength of our prayers, all of which tell the story of who we are. Yet there's another mark, one that sets us apart from others and from who we once were. Unlike our physical marks, this mark can't be seen by human eyes, nor felt by human touch. Yet it's as present as the wind in the trees. For it is the mark of whose we are, rather than who we are. We are not our own. Our stories, our struggles, our victories, and our joys are all part of something larger, something greater than ourselves. This journey we call life is not about finding ourselves so much as it is about losing ourselves and finding Him. As we move toward discovering Him, we become free to explore the depth and breadth of His love and His being. We realize that being a saved people doesn't mean we're a safe people, set upon a shelf to await His return. No, we're not safe, but rather we're sent from a comfortable place in society to the outcasts and the vulnerable, from an easy definition of friend and family to an ability to embrace the enemy with God's love, from inside the church walls to a world outside that needs Jesus. Our vision is to join God in His mission, to go wherever we must and do whatever it takes to penetrate the darkness and rescue the lost. We are set apart. We're marked. We are not our own. We are His.
We're continuing in our series, Made for This Moment, Conquering COVID-19. And if you've been joining us these last few weeks, you know we've been taking kind of a sub-series, a series on neighboring, for lack of a better term. You know, looking at how do we conquer this thing? Well, it's by following Jesus' words, His example, and His command to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And if you're with us, just a couple weeks ago, we studied the book of Philippians, and we saw how Paul found himself unexpectedly imprisoned, isolated, quarantined. You know the feeling. And he's locked up when he was in the midst of this missionary journey, this evangelistic campaign, this crusade, sharing the gospel in the early days of the Christian church to the then known world. And he talks about, because of his imprisonment, because of his isolation, he was able to spread the gospel more powerfully. And how did he do that? By focusing on those closest to him, by focusing on his new and unexpected neighbors. And we've been digging into this thing. And you know, it all boils, Paul actually continues this thought in chapter 2, where he says, think of others. Put them before you put yourself. Put their interests before the interests of your own. And that's a challenge for a lot of us. Let's face it, we think of ourselves first. We think of our family first. We think of our friends first. But he says to think of others. Put their interests. Whose interests? Where was he right now? He was imprisoned. He was locked up. And his closest neighbors were the palace guards. Roman guards, chained, manacled to his wrists. The household of Caesar. Whose interest was he putting before his own? His neighbors. And God's calling us to do the same. And we've looked at a number of the primary obstacles that we typically face when we talk about reaching our neighbors. Even in the best of circumstances, right? The whole world is going through a challenge with this COVID-19 pandemic. But even in the best environments, in the best of situations and circumstances, it's not naturally easy for a lot of us to serve and to be a good neighbor. Now, how much more difficult is it in a time of crisis? But now when the world is at its dark, deep point, Now is when we are called to express the gospel in a more powerful, in a more real, tangible way. And we've been talking about these last few weeks those three primary reasons, the three primary obstacles and challenges that most people face in being a good neighbor, in loving their neighbor as themselves. We talked about 2 weeks ago, we talked about out of oil. What were we talking about? Simply people, Christians, not valuing their neighbors, not being interested enough in their well-being, looking past them because of everything going on with ourselves. That was number one. Number two, last week we talked about being out of time, the time constraint, the time burden, how a lot of us, even though we want to reach out to our neighbors, we desire to make new friends, we just don't seem to have the time to do that. But we discovered that that's actually not true. We all have time. In fact, we know we have time because God would never ask us to do something that He wouldn't give us ample time to make it happen. We're all given the same amount of time. It's about prioritizing our time, putting the main thing first and in focus, rather than all the many good things that we might do. So out of oil, out of that spirit, valuing our neighbors and those around us. Number two, being out of time and not giving priority to the great commandment to love our neighbors. And today we're focusing on number three, a message entitled, Out of Courage. Out of courage. Because the third biggest obstacle that most people face in trying to reach and meet and greet and get to know and build friendships and relationships with their neighbors is fear. Because for a lot of us, it's actually easier for us to maybe go downtown, right, and visit the homeless once every couple weeks, or maybe to be a part of a prison ministry, to go to the prison and to go to the inmates and meet them and have worship and Bible studies and things like that once a week, once every couple weeks, or even to travel halfway around the world to spread the gospel, an evangelistic campaign, and spend a few weeks or a month out of the year in doing that kind of mission work. A lot of us will find that easier than it is for us to just go across the street, to go next door, and to be a good neighbor. Have you ever thought about why that is? I mean, I want to submit to you that it's because when we go downtown, we might be there for an hour or two, but then we leave. When we go to the prison, we're there for an hour or two and then we leave. When we go across the world to the middle of nowhere even, to some village and to meet these people and to share Jesus, we might be there for a few weeks, but then we leave. But our neighbors, well, they're not going anywhere. We're going to see them constantly. In fact, you're going to see them maybe as you pick up the mail, as you pull out of the driveway. And let's be honest, there's many of us, there's a part of us, myself included, I'm talking to myself, guys, that, as we go to just try to make friends, to introduce ourselves, we know there's a chance that maybe it doesn't go well. Maybe there's an awkward situation. I'm not saying it's going to happen, and chances are that won't happen, but we have a natural tendency to be fearful of the negative possible consequences, even as small as those chances may be. And if they do get awkward or weird or strange, well, we're going to see them as we open that front door, as we pull out of the garage, as we take out the trash, and what do? We give an awkward wave, or maybe we kind of duck away and pretend like we didn't see them. It's easier for us to go out of our zone to do work because we're going to leave that space and come back. But with our neighbors, we often find it more challenging because we can't escape whatever is going to happen. Another reason that so many of us have fear or anxiety about reaching out to our neighbors is just simply the state of the world, right? Let's face it, let's be honest. Let's call it for what it is. The world is not getting any safer. In fact, it's getting more dangerous by the day, and the constant news cycle, the negative news cycle, and it doesn't matter, you pick the network, whether it's a TV news network or a newspaper or a news magazine, whatever the news is, wherever you get it, whether it's conservative, liberal, this, that, or in between. For every one positive human interest story, you will see, 20 negative, fear-driven stories. And we allow that to define some of our perspective and our worldview of what we expect the world to be like. And we project that naturally, because if you're taking all that in, it will influence how you see, how you feel, how you think. And then we project that out to those around us, especially to strangers, to the unknown, and sadly to us, many of our neighbors, even those living right next door to us, right down the hall of our apartment, right across the street from our home, they are strangers. And we project some of these same fears on them. It's like, I remember just whatever, when I was in middle school, so I don't know, maybe about 30 years or so ago, me and my friends used to ride our bikes outside at night after it got dark, Nobody thought anything of it. We used to ride our bikes up to New Carrollton Mall. Anybody remember New Carrollton Mall? If you're around from PG County where I am, New Carrollton Mall. We used to lean our bikes outside of the mall, just along the wall. We would go inside to the comic book store for like an hour, reading the comics that we couldn't afford to buy, and then, buying the cheap ones that we could afford to buy. And usually that was from the lunch money, because we didn't actually buy our lunches with it. Mom and Dad, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but it turned out okay, right? And we never thought twice about doing it. We knew when we go back outside after that hour, our bikes would still be there, leaned up against the wall. But today, forget about it. Being out at night, my children, they know our rule is, if I can't see them, if they can't see me, they've gone too far. It's a different world. And we have to be aware of it, and we have to be, cognizant of the sad and depraved state that the world has become, but we can't let it influence our Christian calling. What we need to make sure we do is we still view the world and our neighbors through the eyes of God. We need to see them as He sees them, His children, formed in His image. And if He's called us to become friends, to be a blessing and be blessed by them, then we actually have nothing to fear. He will guide us in those interactions, in those connections, and in those friendships and relationships. And because of all this negative news cycles that we see, because of the negative reality, because of the way the world is right now, and because of the fear that is in it, and the fear that we have in it, we tend to, for ourselves and our family, we tend to want to provide a safe, a clean environment, which means while we want to have relationships, we want to have friendships, we want to have connections, we want to control that distance. We talk about social distancing right now, but the truth is, all of us have had some level of comfort of distance, where we want to keep people, hey, we're cool, but we got to keep a certain amount of space between us, right? We've already had some kind of social distancing innately in us, and that came about, I believe, because of our fear and our concern about the world around us. There's a saying that says, good fences make good neighbors. You see the fence right next to me. Good fences make good neighbors. And what that's saying is, we want to be able to keep a certain separation with those around us. Now, I'm not saying physical fences, right? We're talking metaphorically here. In fact, so you see a fence right over here. Actually, these are my next door neighbors, which we love. We consider them friends. They've been so helpful, been such a blessing to us, and hopefully we've been a blessing in return. But they are friends, and actually the truth is, my wife and I have been wanting to and came close to putting a fence around our yard as well. You can probably see behind us the deep woods, which I've mentioned before, and we get all kinds of wildlife in here, 6, 7, 8 deer with their ticks and pooping on our lawn. And we've had a coyote come through a couple times. We've had foxes, a giant snapping turtle, snakes and all the usual forest friends. So with small kids, we've wanted to put a fence around us too. I'm not talking about a physical fence. We're talking about metaphorical fences that we put to separate ourselves from our neighbors. In fact, so here's the thing. You see a fence right over here, right next to me, right? There's a physical giant wall fence right next to me, separating me from the neighbors that we actually know well and really, really love. On the other side of my yard, there is no fence. There's no physical fence. But the truth is, there is a metaphorical fence that's been there, because those are part of the neighbors that I am, somewhat acquainted with. I kind of know some of their faces. I don't know all their faces. I've been living here for 8 years with them. Let me tell you this story. And it just happened a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. I don't think I mentioned this in one of the earlier messages, but it goes to the heart of talking about putting up fences. I was in the backyard, right here, just a few yards away, filming. I think it was our Easter service, and I'm putting together all the equipment, and it's a lot of work, especially I'm filming alone. So I'm rushing. I'm trying to get things set up before the sun moves too much, and all the color balance goes off, and the everything, right? And so I'm really rushing. I'm in this thing, and all of a sudden I see a stranger walking up my yard from off the street. And he's got a mask on, and I'm not wearing a mask because I'm in my backyard. I'm thinking, I don't need to be worried about all that. A stranger is walking from the street up into my backyard, clearly coming directly towards me. And now he's coming in within like 6 feet, and I actually put my hand up, and I'm just like, whoa, wait, hold on over there. And he says something to the effect of, hey, can I film in your backyard? And I was like, what in the world? This is like a stranger coming off the street wearing a mask, asking me if he can film in my backyard. I'm assuming he saw the cameras and the equipment and all this stuff. And I'm just like, hey, sorry, I can't have anybody in my backyard right now. This was in the early days of our stay-at-home orders as well, and there was all the more fear and anxiety and confusion and everything going on. A stranger comes into my backyard asking me to film in my backyard, and I was just like, hey, sorry. I tried to be as polite as I could, but I was confused. I was totally confused, and I was just like, I can't have anybody in my backyard right now. I'm sorry, I hope you understand. And I turn around and I just start to get back to my business, because I'm like, this is really strange and awkward. So I finished filming everything for that worship service, and I pack up my equipment and I start heading back in. And as I get inside my house, my wife is there. She's at the doorway, and she says, what did you say to him? What was going on? I was just like, yeah, did you see that? Like, a stranger came off the street and was like asking to film in our backyard. And she was like, baby, that wasn't a stranger. That was our next door neighbor. He lives in the house next to us. He didn't come off the street. He came from their kitchen back door. And I felt so bad. I felt terrible. It tells you I had an actual wall, far worse than the physical wall you see here. There was a relational wall that I did not even know what my next door neighbor looked like. Now, in my defense, it wasn't, I don't think, the husband or the wife that lives there, but maybe it's, a relative or a friend or someone else who lives there. But nonetheless, he had been living there. And I had no idea. To tell you how bad I've been in relating to my neighbors, I have yet to go and apologize. It's on my to-do list, and you're going to hear about what I'm planning to do to go and make amends and to reintroduce myself over there. But we put up walls, and a lot of us like it that way. We want our space. We want our distance. Put up walls to separate us. But as long as those walls are up, we cannot fulfill His commission to love our neighbors as ourselves. How in the world can we get to love our neighbors if we can't even connect to them because of the fences, because of the walls, because of the barriers and obstacles that we erect to keep us separated? Have you ever thought about that? You know, God has called us to be in a relationship with our neighbors, right? And relationships take time and they can get messy, right? Think about any real relationship you have. The deeper, the more meaningful that relationship is, it can get messy. How does it get messy? Why does it get messy? Because we're all naturally messy people. I'm messy too. All of us are, because the more we get to know someone, we get to understand and know and learn their flaws and their faults and their failures and their needs. And they get to know all the same about you, and things get messy. And a lot of the times we just don't want to deal with the mess. We want safe, we want clean, so we keep to ourselves, and we do not get to even know our neighbors, let alone love them. But have you ever thought about the fact that relationships with our neighbors is a God-given responsibility? And that God has commanded us to love our neighbors. It is our responsibility as Christians to tear down those walls, to climb over those fences, and to build those relationships that, yes, can get messy. Being a Christian should be uncomfortable. Being a Christian should be an inconvenience. You know, this was part of the thing that really convicted me and hit me, because, you know, the truth is, you know, my life is easy, my life is good, I'm comfortable and all these things. But Jesus Christ here on earth and his disciples, his followers, did not live a life of comfort. They did not live a life of convenience. Our relationships can and will become inconvenient. They will become uncomfortable. And God has still called us to take Christ's example and to get into the inconvenience, to become uncomfortable, to make those lasting and meaningful friendships and relationships with those he has placed around us. I mean, just look at the life of Jesus, right? Look at his time. How many times did he make people, especially spiritual leaders, right? How many times did he make them uncomfortable because of the people he was hanging out with? Right? Who was Jesus hanging out with? He was hanging out with, like, you know, lower class fishermen, tax collectors who were, you know, a bane of society, right? He was with harlots, people of ill repute. Jesus was surrounded, his neighbors that he spent time with, they were all sketchy people. You know, have you asked yourself how many people in your, I feel like, have you been accused of hanging out with sketchy people? You know, how many people in your life are people like, you know, you're hanging out with them? Really? And let's face it, like in our neighborhoods, right? Probably every neighborhood, there might be someone that you think is a little bit strange, maybe a little bit weird or a little bit awkward, you know, whatever it is that you've seen outside as you've been walking on the sidewalks or just hanging out in your front yard or backyard, and you're like, yeah, that house is a little bit strange. And maybe you know other neighbors who are like, yeah, those folks are a little bit strange. If you don't know anybody like that in your neighborhood, let me fill you in. Chances are that person is probably you. They're probably all saying that about you, like, hey, those guys a little bit strange, a little bit awkward. Jesus hung out with the sketchy. Jesus hung out with the awkward. Jesus hung out with the outcast. Jesus hung out with all the people that everyone else would naturally reject or distance themselves from. And you see a great example of this in the book of Luke, Luke chapter 7. Because in Luke chapter 7, there's a story of a neighborhood party. A neighborhood party. In fact, it's like a block party. It's a story of when the Pharisee Simon invited Jesus to come over to his house for a dinner, right? And Simon had been previously suffering from leprosy. Jesus heals Simon of leprosy. Miracle takes place. Simon invites Jesus to come to his home. Now, Simon is a Pharisee. We know most of the Pharisees do not like Jesus. In fact, they hate Jesus. In fact, we know how the story is going to end. Many of them are going to conspire to kill Jesus. Simon, being a Pharisee, I think it's only reasonable to expect that he probably had a number of his friends, including Pharisees, including those who hate Jesus, in his home at that dinner party. So here we are, neighborhood dinner party. Simon, this very well-to-do spiritual leader, invites Jesus as a special guest. I'm sure the disciples were there. And what I read, what I didn't know before, scholars and historians say that the parties like this back in the day, they were akin to what we would typically call a neighborhood block party. In other words, there's a special guest, and then there's the other, close guests of honors that are going to have that closer seat at the table. But parties like this also allowed those in that neighborhood, those neighbors around that block, to come, to be against the wall, to hang out by the doorways, things like that, It wasn't just a closed affair. So here we are in Luke chapter 7, starting verse 36, talking about a neighborhood block party being thrown by a Pharisee. And here we have it, Luke chapter 7, verse 36. And it says, "Now one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him. So he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. When a woman who had a sinful life in that town learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster jar of perfume. And as she stood behind him, at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair and kissed them and poured perfume on them. And when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner." Now I want to pause right there. Let's go back to verse 36. It says one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to dinner. All right? Number one, when you throw that dinner party, when you throw that block party, when you're planning to have something, having your neighbors over, your first guest, your first invitation needs to be Jesus. Jesus was invited to this Pharisee's house. And Jesus doesn't decline an invitation. Now, wherever you are in your life, whatever you may think of yourself, no matter whether you think highly of yourself or you think lowly of yourself, know this. The first person, before you invite any neighbor across the street, down the hall, whatever, before you invite anybody, invite Jesus into your home. Invite him to come and sup and dine with you. I promise you, I guarantee you 100% he will accept your invitation. Doesn't matter what you've done in your life. Doesn't matter all the sins, all the struggles, all the things, whatever you're going. Doesn't matter if you've never accepted him, never invited him. Doesn't matter if you never even wanted to look in his direction before. The moment you invite Jesus into your home, into your life, he will readily accept. In fact, before you can even open the door to go and invite him, he's standing by your doorway waiting to come in. So number one, invite him into your home. First and foremost, and do it today. Simon the Pharisee invites Jesus home for a dinner. Then verse 37, it says, a woman who had a sinful life. Some translations say a woman of ill repute or an immoral woman. And I know there's a lot of kids watching, so we're going to leave it at that. You guys know what we're talking about. A woman who lived a sinful life in that town learned that Jesus was going to be at this Pharisee's house. And she comes in, I guarantee you, uninvited. Now, pause for a second and just think about that. There is this woman who has lived a desperately sinful and wicked life, who desperately needs Jesus. And where does she find the opportunity to finally meet him? To cast herself at his feet, to submit her life to him. Where does she get that opportunity? Where does she finally get that chance? At a neighborhood block party thrown by that Pharisee. You know, folks, here's the thing. What's the lesson in this? You don't even know who may enter into your home, into this relationship with you, as you take this journey and getting to know and to love your neighbors. There's going to be somebody, perhaps, that you find right now sketchy, questionable, maybe even someone who is downcast that everyone else in the neighborhood looks down on. But they're going to meet Jesus in your home. And the truth is, you may not even invite them. But God is going to take the opportunity when you open your home to them, when you open your life to your neighbors. He's going to bring them in because he knows who needs to meet him today. And all you need to do is to make yourself available. Simon didn't invite the woman. Jesus invited her. And Simon had no idea. You're not going to have any idea who God is calling into your life, into relationship with you, so that through you, they will meet him. So this woman, and imagine what she must have been feeling and going through. Because just think about it. The Pharisee, right? I mean, this is the religious elite. And here is the outcast. This woman who is looked down on probably by all the neighborhood. But she's in such desperate need to meet Jesus. She is going to cast aside what I would imagine would be a huge amount of fear, embarrassment, and shame, just for a chance. Because she heard Jesus is here. We can't let fear override our calling and our responsibility to bridge these relationships with us, ourselves, and between them and us and God. The woman goes on to bring this extremely expensive jar of perfume and anoints Jesus, his head, his feet. She cries. She is publicly weeping in the house of a wealthy man, crying, pouring out her heart silently, tears covering his feet, and she wipes it with her hair. Imagine just the dirty, dusty feet of any traveler. And she can't stop kissing them, crying over them, and using her long flowing hair as a towel to wipe them. It doesn't get any more sacrificial, any more humbling, any more loving an act as that. Someone in your neighborhood is desperately longing to meet Jesus. Now, when Simon sees this, he thinks to himself, it doesn't say he says this out loud, right? It says he thinks this is his thoughts. And he said, if Jesus was really a prophet, he would know who this woman was. He would know like the character that she is. You know, everybody around here knows what she does, knows who she is, right? Why would Jesus allow a person like this immoral person, this sinful living person, this person of ill repute, this sketchy, shady character to be so close to him? You know, could he really be a prophet? And Jesus, reading his mind, answers his thoughts. I love how God does that, right? We don't even have to say it. We don't even have to act it. He answers our thoughts. Why? Because he's longing to correct us and lead us, right? He answers Simon's thoughts. And he asks Simon this question. He says, he tells him a story. He says, Simon, I want to ask you something. He says, there's two people. They both had a debt. One person owed 500 denarii, and a denarii was about a day's worth of labor. So it's like 500 days worth of work. So in other words, over a year's salary, like almost a year and a half. And the other person owed 50, right? But the lender, having mercy on them, because neither one could repay, he forgives them both. And so Jesus asks Simon the Pharisee this question. He says, of the two, which will love the lender the more? And Simon says, well, I suppose the person who owed him more, the greater debt that was canceled. And Jesus says, you have answered correctly. Because to whom much is forgiven, they will love all the more. But to whom little is forgiven, they will also love little. And he goes on to tell Simon, I came into your house, you didn't wash my feet. And this woman has cried over, with tears she has washed my feet and wiped them with her own hair, a hair which was a symbol of a woman's beauty then. Cast her beauty upon my dirty and dusty feet. You didn't anoint my head with oil as a refreshing entry. She has poured this expensive, who knows how much she had to sacrifice to purchase this, and she has anointed me in oil. All these things that she has done for me. But you, Simon, who invited me into your home, what have you really sacrificed for me? And you know, I think so many of us Christians struggle with the same thing. We don't want to be Simon, but so many of us are. I am Simon too. Right? We invite Jesus into our home. You? Me? Yeah. But how many of us are truly sacrificing for the sake of Christ? We invite him in our home. We call him a guest of honor, but do we truly treat him as a guest of honor? There are people in such desperate need of Jesus that when they see him, they fall at his feet and they give him everything they have. How about you? How about me? Can we truly say we are giving all of it? We have sacrificed everything. We have bought that expensive jar of perfume just to anoint his life because we want to show him how much he means to us. Or are we like Simon? We invite him in. We have a nice, clean, comfy, cozy dinner party. We invite our friends and family. Hey, we're inviting people to meet Jesus on our time, our convenience, right? On our schedule. We're going to share him in the ways that work best for us. Come on, let's be honest, right? We are a witness in the ways that work best for us. And Jesus had to correct Simon. Yes, Simon, I know you invited me into your home. I know you're throwing me this big, nice, fancy dinner party. You know, all good things, but guess what? This woman, this immoral, sinful living, woman of ill repute, this woman, she has proven to show her love for me far greater than anything you have done. Dagger, right? Because we, so many of us, myself included, are like Simon. And Jesus is calling us to give our all, even through the fear, even through the embarrassment, even through all the questions, all the things that this woman had to go through to just be in Jesus' presence. Cast all of it aside and build up the courage through the Spirit to get closer to Jesus. You know, the verse that really hit me in this study was actually in verse 44, where he says, he asked Simon, do you see this woman? Do you see this woman? And you know what? That asks me is, do you see Neil? He's asking me, Neil, do you see those around you? Do you see the needs right next door? Do you even see them? Are you looking past them? Are you looking through them? Are you looking around them? Are you trying to avoid even looking at them? Simon, do you see this woman? Man, how many of us are even looking for our neighbors? How many of us may have someone desperately searching for Jesus right now, in this moment, right next to us, and we don't even see them? Folks, isolation is not an excuse to not share the life-giving gospel of Jesus to those around us. Yes, we need to be safe. We need to practice our safety measures and our social distancing and things, but we need to find ways to be creative. We need to invite God to show us these creative ways. Because the thing is, it is our responsibility for these relationships. Remember, we were made for this moment. We were placed in this place at this time. And it is our responsibility to get out there and to be that good neighbor. We cannot control how effective we are, but we can control how faithful we are. We cannot control how effective we are. In other words, we could go out there, do all the right things. We could do everything that God has even called us to do, and we could do something wonderful for our neighbors and still be rejected, still be, whatever. It could go really bad. That's not what matters. It is not up to us who responds and how they respond. It is not up to us to be how effective we're going to be. It is just up to us to be faithful to the call of Christ to love our neighbors. During these difficult times, especially when we find that there are people in need right around us, it is our mandate from God to prudently and safely, but sacrificially and indiscriminately love them. It is now more than ever that we don't need to just share the good news. Don't just leave a book or say a good word and walk away. We need to be the good news. The main question we need to ask ourselves is, if we were in their shoes, if we were in a situation, a circumstance, a challenge, a difficulty, how would we want to be treated, right? Treat others as you would have them treat you, right? How would we want to be treated? If we're sick, if we're ill, if we're short on our finances, if we're struggling with unemployment, if our food pantry is bare, if our refrigerator is empty, if we're struggling with the children, childcare, whatever it is, how would we like people to treat us? And the thing is, again, relationships are two-way streets. As you get to connect with them, you're sharing what you're going through. They, I guarantee you, are going to help you and be a blessing to you, because God wants us to bless each other. It is not you here to solve all the problems of your neighborhood. It's just you to be in relation with your neighborhood, to build up the friendship so that the rising tide of your neighborhood and that love will float all boats in your block. So the question is, how can we, especially in a time like this, where we are still here in Maryland required to be socially distant as a safety precaution because of the COVID-19 pandemic, how do we, in light of our current situation, practically find ways to put others above ourselves, as the Bible has asked, to love our neighbors, to connect with them? How do we get to know somebody now when it's needed most, but when the challenge is there the most? God is going to provide us creative and interesting and unique and new ways. The Bible says in the book of Isaiah, I believe he says, "Behold, I will do a new thing." Well, folks, he is going to do a new thing in us and through us right now. So what are some ways that we can do this? Some of the things that I've learned, I've studied, and things that we'll be doing right here in our neighborhood with those around us, I want to share with you. And I want to hear from you things that you're doing, in our comments, whether you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, wherever it is, please let us know. But number one is when you see people, and if your neighborhood is like mine, we see a lot more people actually walking about outside, just up and down throughout the day. I think, people get cabin fever, so they want to get out there, whether they're walking the dog or they're walking alone or they're taking a jog or they're going as a couple, whatever it is. We see people walking by all the time. Now, we need to keep our distance, obviously. You can't walk up to somebody, shake their hand. You're going to scare them too. Look, I'm not saying that, but maybe. Remember we talked about last week setting aside some time during the day? Maybe if you're in a place like us, where people are literally walking on the sidewalks in front of us, throughout the day, it's simply just hanging out, being outside on your front door, front porch, whatever it is. And as you see someone come by, just wave, say hello, look for an opportunity to say, hey, how's everything going? If they may just stop by, and you may get an opportunity to get to know their name, to share your name. Ask them, so where is it that you live? I feel terrible. I've lived here for like 8 years, and I don't think I've ever, in fact, there's someone who walks by our house every single day walking their dog. I've never stopped to find out who they are, what their name is. I don't even know where in the neighborhood they live, but obviously they live close enough to walk their dog every day by our house. So the next time they walk by, I'm going to try to proactively wave, say hello from a distance, and see if we get some kind of response, just to connect and say, I see you walking here all the time, and I've never actually stopped to say hello. Please forgive me. I'm Neil. My family's lived here for 8 years. They may open up too. They may share where they live, and you've started to become an acquaintance from a stranger, right? So number one, look for opportunities as people are looking now often to get out and about and to just connect with people because they've been disconnected for so long. So there may be an actual opportunity to safely distance yet connect and meet and greet somebody. Maybe it's somebody in the neighborhood who's already an acquaintance to you, but you've never actually taken the next step to actually, build that friendship. They've just kind of stayed at a distance as an acquaintance. Look for that opportunity to connect with them. And here's the thing, now, especially in these challenging times, in times of crisis, I mentioned this last week, many people are actually more open and willing to speak up of what's going on in their life. And you can ask them, how's the family doing? How's everything going on at work? I hear, a lot of people are struggling. Everything okay? They may not naturally open up to things like that, but I have heard stories time and time again of people opening up about their challenges and about their struggles because they're looking for people who can relate, that can connect with them. Be that person, be that connection, be that intermediary. Be that person who will put them in your hand and connect them with Jesus through you so the three of you can be a blessing to one another. And we talk about relationships are a two-way street, right? So as they're sharing with you, you make sure you share with them. Number one, hear them out, listen to them, but then open up. Nobody wants to just, be in a one-way relationship. You open yourself up. Expose yourself. Share how you're feeling, what you're going through, some of the challenges maybe with homeschooling now, or maybe you're struggling finding toilet paper, paper towels, hand sanitizer. Maybe you've got extras and you can offer that to them. Maybe it's an elderly person and they have a harder challenge just to get out and about, and we know they're at a higher risk level. Maybe you can offer to say, hey, what do you need from the grocery store? I'm going to be going over there later today or tomorrow. Let me pick up a couple things for you. They may protest, say, no. If you don't tell me, I'm going to pick up some things that I think you might need anyway. So you might as well tell me, right? Just proactively engage and see how you can help and how you can be a blessing. Listen to them and then share from yourself. Now, a couple things that my family are going to be doing in our 8 closest neighbors in the coming weeks. Number one, we're going to be making some homemade desserts, cookies, brownies, lamington cakes. If you don't know what lamington cake is, a special Australian cake is like yellow cake covered in like a wet chocolatey fudge covered with like sweet coconut sprinkles. I mean, it's off the chain. Whatever it is, we're going to be making all these kind of special desserts because, you know, for a lot of people, a great invitation, a great welcome is through their stomach, and everybody loves dessert. And yeah, I'm all for like living healthy. We talked about New Start, and I'm doing good, but hey, we can all spoil ourselves a little bit. And what a great way to introduce yourself, but to hygienically go prepare a dish that you can leave, ring the door, and if they answer, just leave it by there, step aside, make your 6 feet apart, and just introduce yourself. Say, hey, you know, we're from our down the street over here from house X number 1234, and you know, I'm embarrassed to say I never actually took the time to come and meet you guys, but we just been praying for our neighbors, and we just wanted to see, you know, make sure everything was okay. Thought we'd offer you a little gift over here. Just find something that feels natural to you, but you go there bearing a simple gift that everyone is going to appreciate and love. Baked goods, some kind of yummy dessert, some sweet treat. And it's going to open up an opportunity to go from a stranger to an acquaintance, or to build that acquaintance to a friendship. So the first thing that we're going to do in the coming days is we're going to make some sweet desserts, and we're going to go and visit, knock on the doors, and just lay them over there for those neighbors. A great way to introduce yourself. Then maybe a week or so after that, our plan is to get these $5 gift cards. You know, it might be an Amazon gift card or a $5 Voodoo gift card, but and drop it off with a bag of popcorn. And we're going to say, hey, we just wanted to offer a free movie night to you and your family. You know, here's a $5 gift card so you can get an online rental, rent a movie, and here's a bag of popcorn to enjoy. You know, most people are going to enjoy watching a movie. They're going to appreciate that you're giving them a free rental and popcorn. It's something simple. It's something that's not too expensive. And again, it just shows a level of care and concern that going from a stranger to an acquaintance, going from an acquaintance to a friend, maybe it's a neglected friendship, and reestablishing that and building up that relationship. So we're going to start, we're working our way through stomachs, right? Because honestly, if someone was to come to us, remember it says, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Listen, I would love for, in fact, some of my neighbors did. When we moved into this house, their introduction to us was they sent kids to our front door. In fact, the neighbors right on the other side of this fence, they did this. They sent their kids with some homemade cookies. It made a friendship right off the bat. We were like, these people are cool, right? What a way to introduce yourself. By meeting the people where they are, speaking a language they understand, and doing something that most of them are going to appreciate. So we're going to be giving out baked goods and giving a movie night and some popcorn. I don't know. Put it in your situation, circumstance, your environment, what feels right to you. Pray about it. God's going to open and reveal something to you. Another thing that you can offer, especially after you've made some kind of connection, you've had the conversation, you've met them through their bellies, as I would love to be met. You can offer an invitation to join one of our upcoming free online classes. We call them growth groups. And I'm announcing it right now, actually for the first time. Our next semester is starting on June 14th, just about a month from now. If you're not aware of what a growth group is, it is a free online class. So even in the midst of our stay-at-home orders and the quarantine, we're going to be offering these free classes through Zoom that's open to anybody and everybody. All are welcome. And right now, it looks like we might have about 5 classes. We're going to have a class on adulting for young adults. How do you make that transition from youth to adulthood, you know, in a healthy, strong, and fulfilling way, spiritually, financially, professionally? You don't want to miss it. That was one of our most exciting and highest rated classes that we had last semester. Then we are going to have a class on finances, financial freedom, debt relief, get out of debt, stay out of debt, you know, living a happier, healthier life because of your financial freedom. And again, another popular class continuing from last semester. We're going to have a special kids Bible study on the fruits of the Spirit designed for early teens, for the younger groups. This is going to be a powerful way to get to know the fruits of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit moving in their life, and how desperately kids need that now. We may be having an online art class. We're still hoping to finalize this thing and we'll see what happens, but we may have an online art class. You've been interested in doing art? Well, you know, join this class. You're going to have instructors meeting you through Zoom, teaching you through all these different techniques, oil, drawing, whatever it may be. And I am going to be leading a class on neighboring. It's a continuation of this series that we're kind of closing out right now. We're going to go more in depth into what it means to be a good neighbor. How do we love our neighbor, especially in a time like this? So a great invitation would be to invite them into a nurturing, healthy, self-fulfilling, self-growing growth group through Living Water. And you know, folks, as we close, I want to tell you, I understand that what I'm suggesting, what we're calling, is hard. This is not easy to most of us. But you know what was even harder? What was unfathomably more difficult than what is being asked of us is the great sacrifice that God made to give His Son, to become our neighbor, to die for us so that we could become His neighbor in His neighborhood. And in light of the great sacrifice of Christ and the great sacrifice of the Father giving His Son to die for us, can't we at least do our best to reflect Jesus and to do the same and be a good neighbor with those He has placed around us, so that we can be a blessing to them and that they will be a blessing to us? We need to be cautious and careful with the health of ourselves and of our neighbors. But we cannot be cautious about following and sharing the love of Jesus with those around us. I close with Christ's own words in the book of John, chapter 13. So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Folks, we are called to love our neighbors. If you want to claim to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, you have no choice but to love your neighbors. And you know what? If you would just take that chance, if you take the time, if you take the courage, if you take the care to climb over that wall, to scale that fence, to take a look on the other side, I promise you, you're going to find the face of a future friend. Father God, cast out our fears and replace it with a love for others. Help us to show the world we are your disciples by our love for our neighbors. Bless us now as we follow your command, as we answer your call, as we defeat COVID-19 by spreading the love of Jesus. And it's in His name we pray. Amen.
Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering all, surrendering all. You find me here, Lord, as you draw me near. I'm desperate for you. I'm desperate for you. I surrender. You drench my soul, His mercy and grace unfold. I hunger and thirst. I hunger and thirst. With arms stretched wide, I know you hear my cry. Speak to me now. Speak to me now. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. And I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. Like a rushing wind, Jesus, breathe within. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a mighty storm, stir within my soul. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a rushing wind, Jesus, breathe within. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a mighty storm, stir within my soul. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a rushing wind, Jesus, breathe within. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a mighty storm, stir within my soul. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more.
Thank you for joining us again this week. I hope you were blessed by today's message. And if you were, we'd love to hear from you. And you can get in touch with us right on our website. Go to livingwatersda.org. Click on the My Next Step button. Share a comment. Let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and what you're feeling. Maybe there's something we can do to help you. Maybe just to encourage. Maybe you want a phone call, start a Bible study, join an online growth group, subscribe to our Right Now media ministry. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. And while you're on our website, we'd appreciate you clicking on the Give button. If you can, your tithes and offerings help empower and support the ministry of the gospel through this church. And your sacrificial offerings have helped us serve hundreds of families in need through our local College Park Food Bank. And God bless you for all the sacrificial support you've been making. And while you're on YouTube and Facebook watching us right now, we'd appreciate if you click on the subscribe, the like, the share button. If you've enjoyed today's service, share the good news. We want to spread this gospel far and wide, and you are the power to do it. So please share us while you're here. And lastly, another reminder, you can sign up for our next semester of our online growth groups. Again, on our website, just click on the online classes button and you'll be able to register for a life-changing, inspiring, and encouraging online class free of charge just for you. You won't regret it. So go to our website, sign up today. I promise you, you're going to love it. And until we meet again, may the living water of Jesus Christ flow in you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Sabbath. God bless you.